This summer, Instacart presents famous summer flavors coming to your front door. Or pool. Or hotel.
Your grocery delivery has arrived, sir.
That was faster than room service.
No violins in the lobby.
Oh, seriously? Anyway, sit back, relax, and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Starring your favorite snacks, drinks, and more. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Rated H for hungry audiences. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
It's Saturday the 17th of August. I'm Ciara Evans, and this was a week that saw Ukraine continue its Kursk invasion. Good news on inflation, 5 charged over Matthew Perry death, and Tom Daly hang up his Speedos.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
Ukraine caught the world off guard last week with a cross-border attack into Russia's southwestern Kursk region. It led to Russia declaring a federal-level emergency in the region, while the UN nuclear agency issued a warning as fighting approached the Kursk nuclear power plant. On Sunday, Ukrainian President Zelensky acknowledged the incursion and said he was proud of his troops' efforts.
I thank every unit of our defence forces that makes this happen. Ukraine is proving that it really knows how to restore justice and guarantees exactly the kind of pressure that is needed. Pressure on the aggressor.
By Monday, Ukrainian forces were claiming control of up to 1,000 square kilometres of Russian territory in the Kursk region. Russian President Putin continued to assure his population that the Ukrainian invasion will be quickly dealt with, but there was little sign of a coordinated Russian pushback as yet. With no sense of irony, Putin said that his Ukrainian attack puts any peace talks in jeopardy.
Apparently, the enemy seeks to improve its negotiating positions in the future. But what kind of negotiations can we even talk about with people who indiscriminately conduct strikes at civilians and civilian infrastructure, or try to create threats to nuclear power facilities?
Ukrainian President Zelensky says that Kursk will be Putin's catastrophe, a reference to events 24 years ago when a Russian nuclear sub, the Kursk, sank 3 months into Putin's leadership. Ukrainian MP Andriy Osadchuk said Russia doesn't know how to respond.
We confused Russians, and they really did not expect that we will be so brave to attack them. And it's another signal for everyone in this world that, in fact, Russia is not prepared for any attack from any side.
A foreign ministry spokesman said that Ukraine has no interest in holding the Kursk territory gained in the long term, and that unlike Russia, Ukraine does not need other people's property. The primary objective seems to be to complicate Russian logistics and supply lines, and maybe to relieve some pressure on the front line in Donbass. James Heapy, former Armed Forces Minister, says Putin will have to react.
If the Ukrainians can solidify their position in the Kursk Oblast, then eventually Putin will be forced to respond, and that will get them the relief in the Donbass that they hope for. And it will remind people that the Ukrainians are hard as nails, and they will keep going if we give them the resource.
The mini-invasion continued on Wednesday, with Ukrainian sources claiming they had advanced another 2 kilometres into the Kursk region and had captured more than 100 additional Russian troops. There were also coordinated Ukrainian strikes on Russian airfields intended to limit the range of Russian fighter jets, which can launch hypersonic missiles that have proved troublesome for Ukraine's air defences. US President Biden commented on the incursion for the first time, saying it causes a real dilemma for Vladimir Putin. Former Russian President Mikhail Kazyanov told the BBC's World at One that he thinks Putin will do something drastic to punish the Ukrainian attack.
It's not possible for them to touch recognized territory of Russia. And if it happens that it will be part of negotiations for exchange of territories, that for him a real psychological and political problem.
Former head of MI6 Sir Alex Younger says that from the Ukrainian point of view, this has been a PR victory, but it's critical that Ukrainian troops don't pay a high price for the invasion.
Zelensky has been hampered by an inability to articulate a theory of victory. This is him doing that. And of course, Western support is contingent on an estimation that he's going to succeed. This is about cost and uncertainty for Putin.
By Friday, Ukrainian forces were 35 kilometres inside Russia's Kursk region and fully controlled the key town of Sudessa, according to Ukrainian President Zelensky. It's in the location of a key Russian pumping station for sending gas to Europe. Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief General Sursky announced that Ukraine was setting up a military commandant's office in the Kursk region to ensure that order would be kept and the needs to the local population met. Ukraine continues to insist it has no interest just in a long-term occupation of Kursk, but MP Maria Mezentseva says the focus is on keeping civilians caught up in the war safe.
We completely adhere to international humanitarian law. We are supplying those civilians who are remaining at the Kursk territory with food, medication, with everything which is needed, and of course the corridors for evacuation.
It emerged that British Challenger 2 tanks were used in the assault on the Kursk region, but the Ministry of Defence has reiterated that Ukraine has a right to use donated weapons for self-defence. Former UK Ambassador to Belarus, Nigel Gould-Davies, says that Ukraine's Western allies have been supportive.
We have credible reports of Western equipment from other countries, including the United States, being used in this daring Ukrainian incursion onto Russian territory. So we're not alone in this, we're in good company.
Last weekend saw thousands of anti-racism protesters march across the UK in a show of support for refugees and minority groups amid fears of further violence. Around 5,000 people gathered outside Reform UK's central London HQ, marching with Stand Up to Racism. Speaking at the demonstration, national organiser Samira Ali said Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has a lot to answer for.
We think that Nigel Farage is fanning the flames of racism, and his dangerous rhetoric about trying to place the blames in society on Muslims, migrants and refugees is actually what is giving confidence to the far right who are rioting through our streets. We think that Farage has to answer to this.
The protests followed 2 weeks of unrest, which has led to over 1,100 arrests and over 650 charges so far, including one charge of rioting for a 15-year-old boy. There's concerns that the justice system can't cope, but Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds says there's plenty of capacity.
There is sufficient prison capacity. The early decisions the government had to make mean we can deal with this. So you've seen an incredibly swift and robust response, and then if we can make sure the recovery is handled just as well, we'll make sure we get through this very difficult period.
In the aftermath of the riots, they may have forgotten that there's a Tory leadership contest going on, but don't worry, there are still 80 days to go before the new leader is selected. A new poll on Tuesday suggested not only have people forgotten, they just don't care, with 62% saying they're not really bothered who replaces acting leader Rishi Sunak. There are still 6 contenders in the race, including Priti Patel, Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat. The former security minister made a campaign speech on Tuesday hitting out at Elon Musk's civil war in the UK Commons, but also questioning new Prime Minister Keir Starmer's response to the recent riots.
When we needed a strong government, we got a party in the mindset of opposition. We needed a leader. We got a lawyer waiting for the case to reach court. These are early days for the government, and government isn't easy, but government isn't a game either.
There was better news on Wednesday when it came to inflation. America was celebrating a drop in their inflation rate as it hit 2.9%, the first time it's been below 3% for more than 3 years. That may lead to a rate cut by the Federal Reserve, which could see pressure ease on the US economy. The UK's inflation rate rose slightly up to 2.2%, but it was within the expected range. And KPMG's chief economist, Yael Selfin, said it's not something to be too worried about.
What we do have is energy prices making that headline inflation slightly jumpier, because we had falls in energy prices last year, and this year they're going up a little bit again. So overall, it's upward pressure again on inflation from energy prices.
Thursday saw more economic data released, although it sparked a row between Labour and the Tories. The latest figures from the Office for National Statistics showed growth of 0.6% in the economy between April and June. That's a slight decrease on the first quarter growth of 0.7%, but it's a positive sign after last year's brief recession. It's still a long way off of what the new Labour government is hoping to see as they plan to take the brakes off Britain. And there was a warning from economists that growth may slow in the second half of the year. Tory Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Laura Trott, said the data proves that her government left things in good shape.
These are really positive GDP figures this morning, but the only person who's not out celebrating them is the Chancellor. You know, Rachel Reeves is sitting in the Treasury fuming because this is yet more data to undermine her narrative that the economic inheritance was bad.
Labour's Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, said because Labour are dealing with the highest debut burden in 60 years and the highest tax level, which means they still have a mountain to climb.
What we inherited from the Conservatives was the worst fiscal inheritance since the Second World War. And that means we've got very challenging economic circumstances. We welcome growth in the economy, but we've got much, much more work to do to recover from the mess that we were left with.
This week saw a series of reports that painted a grim picture of both the NHS and the state of policing in the UK. On Tuesday, a review from the Nottingham attacks of June 2023 found a series of errors, omissions and misjudgments by mental health services. The attacks resulted in the deaths of Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates, and the man who carried out the killings, Valdo Calocane, is under hospital order in a high security facility. The Care Quality Commission report found that he'd been diagnosed with psychosis and paranoid schizophrenia 3 years before the attack, but slipped through cracks in the NHS system. Health Secretary Wes Streeting said it's simply not good enough.
What's so shocking is that there were so many failures and fundamental failures. I can't imagine the unbearable grief they are going through, let alone knowing that these deaths were preventable if the NHS had been there when it should have been.
The families of the victims say that those responsible have blood on their hands and have continued their call for a statutory inquiry. The Chief Inspector of Healthcare at the CQC, Chris Dziki, says the NHS needs to act on its recommendations quickly.
We went even further in publishing the recommendations we are expecting that the trust should take. We have also made recommendations for other national bodies in order to ensure people are receiving the care and treatment they deserve.
Wednesday saw another worrying report, this time from the British Transport Police, which reveals shocking statistics about the violence against women and girls on public transport. There's been a 50% increase in incidents in the last 2 years, while sexual assaults have risen by 10%. The report came on the same day that The Guardian revealed 50 women have been murdered so far this year by men. Former Victims Commissioner Dame Vera Bard says that the level of violence requires for stronger action from the police and that it should be treated in the same way the criminal justice system has dealt with those involved in the recent riots.
Some probably limited but nonetheless powerful experiment with putting rape and sexual assault cases right at the top of the list and doing them quickly might have some significant deterrent impact.
Anna Burley from the Reclaim the Street says it's not just about violence against women, it's reflective of a larger issue in society and the rise of misogyny.
There's some things that can happen sooner. We've got an issue around massive backlogs in the criminal justice system, a seriously small number of rapes that end up being taken to court, let alone resulting in conviction. There are all sorts of problems in the criminal justice system in the way that we handle violent men or men who behave in this way.
And that wasn't the end of it, as an official report from the Met Police, the UK's biggest police force, found that it was providing an inadequate or failing service on 7 of 8 key metrics. The report was described as devastating, and it comes 2 years after Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley promised sweeping reforms. The areas described as inadequate included investigating crime and managing offenders, with improvement required in preventing crime, leadership and dealing with the public. His Majesty's Inspector Lee Freeman says that the middle-ranking officers appeared to have limited knowledge of the plan and that there is work to be done.
The new team in the 18 months that they have been in since when we did the inspection have made many key changes that I'm sure will have an impact. So this is very much a work in progress.
US Vice President Kamala Harris continued her momentum this week as she and Vice President nominee Tim Walz hit the campaign trail across the country. She's picked up huge momentum and moved ahead of Donald Trump in the polling, including many crucial swing states. She's begun to clarify her policy positions in advance of next week's Democratic convention in Chicago, and last weekend saw her issue a clear call for action in Gaza.
Israel has a right to go after the terrorists that are Hamas, but they also have an important responsibility to avoid civilian casualties. We need to get the hostages out. We need a hostage deal and we need a ceasefire.
Republican VP nominee J.D. Vance has been trying to push back on the weirdo rhetoric which has followed him since Democratic VP pick Tom Walz came up with the attack line a couple of weeks ago. Vance has hugely negative ratings in polling and is seen as more of a liability than an asset on the Trump ticket. In a series of interviews at the weekend, Vance assured the Democrats of schoolyard bullying and claimed Walz overstated his past military service. But US Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg argues no one can take Vance seriously given his running mate recently told 160 lies at a press conference.
I watched that interview and watched J.D. Vance present himself as suddenly very particular about precision in speech and very concerned about honesty. He's running with Donald Trump, somebody who has set records for lying in public life.
The Democratic National Convention starts on Monday, and already President Biden and former President Barack Obama are confirmed as speakers. Donald Trump hasn't taken the Kamala momentum well, but he's also made very few campaign appearances and has taken to ranting on social media about crowd sizes. Monday night saw him sit down for an interview with Elon Musk on X. The interview was delayed by 40 minutes due to technical delays and featured a very strange and slurring Trump.
We cannot have a Democrat. We cannot have her. She's incompetent. She's as bad as Biden in a different...
Yeah.
Look, she hasn't done an interview since this whole scam started. And say what you want. This was a coup.
Despite Trump's complaints on behalf of Joe Biden, the man himself appeared with Kamala on Thursday at a campaign event where the crowd chanted, "Thank you, Joe," and his vice president paid tribute to his leadership. Biden had some thoughts too on the Republicans' Project 2025, which Trump has been trying to distance himself from.
Let me tell you what our Project 2025 is. Beat the hell out of them. I mean it.
Does it come in the Standout 7? Tom Daly hangs up his Speedos and Janet Jackson shakes her family tree.
Right after this.
This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first, call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee with your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 an order. Additional terms apply.
Welcome back.
Multiple people were arrested and charged on Thursday over the death of actor Matthew Perry. The Friends star was found dead in his hot tub last October, and traces of the drug ketamine were found in his system. He'd spoken about his battles with addiction over many years, and it was believed that he'd been undergoing ketamine therapy to help treat depression. But medical tests showed that the level of drug in his system was far higher than would be expected. Now police in LA have charged 5 people who they say took advantage of Matthew Perry's addiction issues. A US Attorney Martin Estrada explains.
This network included a live-in assistant, various go-betweens, 2 medical doctors, and a major source of drug supply known as, quote, the ketamine queen. We charged 5 defendants in this matter.
Team GB returned from Paris on Monday with a haul of 65 Olympic medals, one more than they won in Tokyo. However, the chair of UK Sport, Catherine Granger, says the number of gold medals at just 14 is a little disappointing, and that contributed to the UK ending up at 7th in the overall medal table. One man who has contributed more than his fair share of Olympic medals is diver and passionate knitter Tom Daly. He picked up an astonishing 5 medals over 5 Olympic Games, and he says it's finally time to hang up the Speedos.
It's really hard to talk about, but it's, I have to hang it up at some time. So, I'm really happy with how everything's gone. It's always hard when you say goodbye. Lots of things to process, but, I think it's the right time.
Her brother Michael might get all the media attention even now, but Janet Jackson is one of the biggest selling female artists of all time. She sold over 100 million records, became the first woman to be nominated for a Grammy as a producer, and now she's back on tour. The tour is called Together Again and it's due to hit the UK this September, so she's been popping up all over the place. She certainly surprised Scott Mills when she did a quick run through of the Jackson family tree and the name Stevie Wonder came up.
Are you related to Stevie?
He's our cousin on my mother's side. So is Tracy Chapman.
Hang on, can we go through the family tree again?
So is Samuel Jackson.
So Stevie is what to you?
My cousin.
Tracy Chapman.
Cousin.
Samuel Jackson.
He would be a cousin too. I mean, he's not my brother.
Right.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes, we'll give you the world.
At Ashley, you'll find colorful furniture that brings your home to life.
Ashley makes it easier than ever to express your personal style with an array of looks in fun trending hues to choose from earth tones to vibrant colors to calming blues and greens. Ashley has pieces for every room in the house in the season's most sought-after shades. A more colorful life starts at Ashley. Shop in store or online today. Ashley, for the love of home.